Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the world of fairies. We now go into the B. Ba Duk Chua. This is Vietnam belief, and there are three nature spirits known collectively as the Three Mothers, and their names are Duk Ba, Ba Duk Chua, and Duk Than Ba. These nature spirits were worshipped in small rooms in pagodas dedicated to the Buddha. Baduk Chua was the spirit of the air and was created by the Jade Emperor. Baba. The fairy name Baba dates back to the early folk belief of Ungre. However, the fae gradually evolved over time into evil spirit, resembling a hag or a witch. Baba Yaga. She is also known by many other names like Bone Legs, Grandmother Bony Shanks, Grandmother in the Forest, Iron-Nosed Witch, Iron-Nosed Woman, Yaga Baba, Jizzy Baba, Jezzy Baba. Originally from Hungarian law, Baba Yaga, Old Woman Yaga, or Old Woman Jawiga, was a kind and benevolent fairy. Over time, her stories changed and she became a cannibalistic old crone or witch, small and ugly. In some stories, Baba Yaga was a race of evil fae and not an individual. The name and the character of Baba Yaga appeared in a number of Eastern European and Slavic myths. As an evil individual, Baba Yaga is described as being old, short, skinny and ugly, with particularly distorted and large nose and long, crooked teeth. Her behaviour has earned her the reputation of being the devil's own grandmother. In instances where Baba Yaga was a fairy race rather than a singular individual, such as in the fairy tale of The Feather of Finest the Falcon, the hero was met by not one but three Baba Yagas. In these instances, the Baba Yagas were commonly benevolent, gifting the hero with both advice and magical presence he would later need to succeed in his quest. Baba Yaga, as a character, was hardly set in her way. She was used seemingly to fulfill a storyteller's needs. There were numerous stories of her kidnapping children and threatening to eat them. In fact, many versions of cruel and evil witches living in houses of cake and candy were named Baba Yaga. In some stories, heroes would make the brave and dangerous decision to seek out Baba Yaga for advice or assistance in completing a quest. In these stories, there was always an emphasis placed on the hero's level of politeness, his need for proper preparation, and purity of his spirit. Sometimes she played the role of an antagonist, while other times she was a necessary source of guidance. No matter what role she was fulfilling, she drove a hard bargain and was the one who set the conditions and terms of the agreement. It mattered not to her if the hero accepted or refused the deal. All of her verbal contracts allowed her the right to eat anyone who was later unable to or unwilling to fulfill their end of the deal. By use of gigantic motor, Baba Yaga could fly amazingly fast through the forest, steering by use of the accompanying pestle in her right hand, while with the left she used to drive a magical broom made out of silver birch to sweep away any sign of her having passed through the area. As she travelled, it was believed a host of spirits would trail right behind her. Baba Yaga's hut. Baba Yaga lived in a hut surrounded by a picket fence, the tops of which were decorated with the skulls of her victims. The hut itself, windowless and with a false door, had proportionally large chicken legs, which it rested upon. When wanting to enter into her home, Baba Yaga must enchant a magical spell which would compel the hut to lower itself to ground level. Anyone who tried to pick the lock in her home would be surprised to discover the keyhole was nothing more than a mouth full of sharp teeth. The hut was filled with scores of invisible servants who protected and served Baba Yaga. It has been theorized the concept of Baba Yaga's hut was not so far-fetched. The nomadic tribal hunter of Serbia would build log cabins upon the tall stumps of 2 or 3 trees. The way the tree stump roots grow and spread looked just like chicken feet. These huts would have a trap door built into the floor that could only be reached by ladder, as a bear was not only strong enough to break into a sturdy door, but also stubborn enough to keep it up until it actually broke it open. Bears, no matter their size or strength, cannot climb a ladder. Small shrines containing clay figurines have also been found in the same sort of construction. Russian archaeologists discovered in 1948 some small huts fitting the description of Baba Yaga's hut. As circular fences surrounded the hut, and inside they found traces of corpse cremation as well. There are many versions of Baba Yaga's hut. In some tales it was connected with 3 mysterious riders. The first dressed in black and rode upon a black horse decked out in black boarding and tack. It was a personification of night. Likewise, there was a second rider dressed in red upon a horse, whose personification was of the sun, and the third rider dressed all in white upon a white horse was the personification of the day. If a visitor asked about the riders, she would explain what they are, but if she was ever asked about her invisible house servants, she will try to kill the person. Babot, a famous ogre and a nursery bogey. From French law. Babot was used by nurses in hospital to frighten their charges into behaving. The nursing staff would tell the children the ogre sprinkled naughty children on his evening salad. Baban. On the Isle of Man, England, Baban, harvest baby, was a fertility spirit. It lived in the last sheaf of corn at the time of harvest. This sheaf, cut by a young maiden, was to be made into an effigy of the corn spirit, decorated, paraded, and then held in honour at the feast. The effigy of Baban Nai Mihilia was kept until sowing season, when the spirit was then released back into the field. Other traditions involved corn dolls required some form of sacrifices, be it the stimulation or an actual spilling of blood. Bacche, a nymph from the mythical Mount Nisa. Bacche was a nurse to the infant god Bacchus or Densus in classical Greek mythology. Collectively, these nymphs were known as the Bacchantes, and their names were Bacche, Bromi, Ratto, Chisius, Celia, Coronus, Macris, and Nisa. The Bacna Rachna, also known as Yumbos and Good People. In folklore from the Republic of Senegal in Western Africa, in the Pap Mountain regions, comes the dark-eyed, fair-skinned, silver-hair fairies, known as the Bacna Rachna, the Good People. Standing 2 to 3 foot tall, these good-natured fae were known to dance and feast on moonlit nights, inviting humans to freely join them. According to the Jollof people of Goree Island, if the Bacnarakna were low on the supplies they needed to make their feast, they would steal exactly what they needed. Bakahastan, and it has a variable which is Nikur, meaning broke horse. A beautiful white fairy horse from Scandinavian folklore. It's very similar to the Kelpie from Scottish lore and the Nacken Nixon of Polish lore. It rose up from the river and lurked along the banks, looking too magnificent not to be ridden. Anyone who climbed upon its back would find they would not be able to climb off again, as it charged headlong into the water, drowning its rider. In the Middle Ages, there was a belief in saying, Bacahaston, go back to your watery place and set me free in the name of the Lady and the Holy Trinity. 3 times, the rider would be allowed to dismount from the fairy animal before being murdered. There are stories of it being harnessed and made to plough, but sometimes this is because it was all part of the Bacahaston's plan, while other times it was domestication and it came about because it was tricked by the hero of the story. Bad. In Persian demonology, Bad was a jinn and the demon of tempests. It could control the wind. Bad is most powerful on the 22nd day of every month. Bademagu, and also its variation is Melwas. A kindly fairy king of the fairy underworld kingdom, Gore Bademagu was the father of the fairy king Maleficent, who once kidnapped Queen Guinevere, according to Arthurian law. Ultimately, he forced his son to return the stolen queen. Bademagu was recrowned king annual on the feast day of Mary Magdalene. Baetata. From the folklore of the Tupi, Guarani-speaking people who lived in the Brazilian Amazon basin comes the Baetata, marsh fire, an injurious water spirit with the ability to make it rain. It was similar to the will-o'-the-wisps, in that this fairy will lure humans off into the woods until they were hopelessly lost. Bafur. Bafur, one of the great dwarf lords, is one of the ones named in the Voluspa as well. Baglet el Quibor. Variations of this name is actually Mule of the Graves, and it's a singular but a very specific jinn from Arabic law. It was created when Marrakesh widow by the name of Baglet el Quibor broke Islamic law and remarried before the proper mourning period had passed. Having broken this law, it would have been impossible to determine paternity should the question arise. Consequently, when the woman died, eternal peace and rest was denied, with the exception of Wednesday nights. So, she returned to earth between midnight and dawn in the form of a saddled mule, roams the marketplace looking for cavorting men. Whenever she found one, she would allow them to mount upon her back and take them on a wild ride into the desert, where then she would bury them alive. Bahaman. Bahaman is a jinn from Persian demonology. Bahaman was a demonic fae of appeasing anger. He had power over oxen, sheep, and all animals of peaceful nature. Balinjo. Similar to the river nymphs of Greek mythology, the Balinjo of Nigeria was the spirit of the Ogun River. He was associated with fertility and healing. Bakimono. Bakimono means changing things, and was a general term for the injurious little spirits from Japanese folklore. They were described as looking similar to a goblin, but would also be evil spirits or witches. Buddhists believe some bakimono can cause illnesses and plagues. The Bakai, or the Bachants, also known as Thyades and the Maenads. They're in Greek mythology. It's a female nymph and they are companions to the god of wine. Bakru, a race of evil fairies or dwarves living in the Paramaribo and coastal region of Suriname. The Bakru were described as being half flesh and half wood, black skin and hair, and having very large black eyes set in their very large heads on their childlike bodies. Some sources claim they were the constructs of evil magicians, always appearing in twos, one male, one female. The Bakru were similar to the Apuku of West African law. If one wishes to have a Bakru as a servant, the person must agree to a pact with the being, signing away their soul for whatever riches the Bakra will bring them. Much like the Atvaras of European law, other sources claim they can be created and purchased from evil magicians and kept as servants. If someone were to strike their master, the Bakru dashes in the way, taking the shot with the wood inside of their body. Later they will kill the assailant. When the owner of the Bakru dies, the fairy is then free and will wander the roads looking for children to tease. If a child should ever accept a drink from a Bakru, it will die. Bax ear. Bax ear, also known as Bax Kuba, mill old woman, Bax Kaguza, Bax Oza, Hax Oza, mill master. The Mari people of Russia have in their folk belief of being known as Bax Iya, similar to the Kumulis. Bax protected the mill and its workings as long as a bowl of porridge with butter was left for him. Should the offering be forgotten, the fae would become angry and take its revenge by causing mechanical problems and spilling the grain. He lived in the crawl space underneath the floorboards or behind the water wheel. Baku. Baku originates in Chinese folklore, means dream eater. They made their way into traditional Japanese fairy lore as early as period 14th-15th century. These generally benign fairies literally devour a person's dreams and nightmares. Normally they do this of their own free will, grazing through the night. However, there are some stories of a Baku being called to a person for assistance in fighting off a nightmare. It's believed when a Baku eats a person's dream, it gives them good luck in return. Physical descriptions of the Baku are chimera like at best and vary wildly. They are said to have the head of an elephant and the body of a lion, while other sources claim they have the head of a lion but the body of a horse, with a cow tail and legs and feet of a tiger. In some regions, they are described as being more pig-like, and its colour, well, it's anywhere between black and pink. Balanos. In ancient Greek mythology, Balanos was a hamadryad of the acorn-bearing oak tree or walnut. The sources are conflicting, though. She was born from the incestuous relationship between the nature spirit Oxlos and his actual sister Hamadryas. Balderish. In traditional German fairy lore, Balderish, prince ruler, was a giant living on the Isle of Rügen in the Baltic Sea. According to the story, Balderish did not like wading through the ocean each time he wanted to visit Pomerania on the mainland. Donning an apron and filling it with earth, he intended to connect Rügen to them by making a huge dam. As he walked, a hole tore in his apron, and as the clay and dirt fell from it in clumps, it formed what was later named the 9 Hills. Balderich repaired the hole and travelled on, but another seam became loose and 13 more hills were created. By the time the giant reached the shoreline and began to use the earth he had left, it was only enough to form the hook of Pronitz and the peninsula of Drig. Enraged his plan did not work, Balderich threw a fit and died where he fell. His dam, incompleted, or uncompleted it should say. Balkin, Lord of the Northern Mountains. In northern Scotland comes the fairy lore of Balkin, a satyr-like fairy said to feed upon the air. He had a wife and other 12,000 children, all of which makes up fairy population of the Caithness, Sutherland, and the adjacent islands. He and his massive brood speak ancient Irish and lived in caves. Balkin and a servant named Luridan. He was sent on errands to Finland, Lapland, and the northern parts of Russia. Balkin and his fairies of air were at constant war with the fairies of fire, who lived on Mount Hekla, Iceland. And that's the next part, guys, of the world of fairies and its many, many mythical beings, because let's be honest, it has a lot, right? Please hit that like, share if you can, And also do consider subscribing. Many blessings. Wysteria, energy, twister.